All day you held it together. You answered messages, you smiled at the right moments. You seemed fine, genuinely, convincingly fine. Nobody around you suspected anything different. And then the door closed behind you, finally alone, and something inside you just let go. Not calmly, not gently, all at once, like a dam finally failing. Like something that had been holding back far more than anyone around you ever actually knew. Shaking, crying, collapsing quietly onto the floor or into the driver's seat. Nobody saw this version of you today. Nobody sees this version of you most days. It only exists here in this specific, private, carefully guarded moment of safety. If you only fall apart when absolutely no one is watching, this video is going to explain exactly why your body waits until it's safe to finally feel everything it's been quietly carrying since the morning, since the week, since sometimes much longer than that. This isn't weakness, this is a very specific pattern. Picture your day, meetings handled smoothly, tasks completed on schedule, maybe a crisis at work, managed calmly, competently, exactly the way everyone has come to expect from you. You held that composure through hours of it, through conversations that quietly drained you, through moments that genuinely hurt, absorbed instantly and processed later, always later, never now. Then the car door closes, or the bathroom lock clicks, or the front door shuts behind you and you're finally completely alone. And that's exactly when it happens. The shaking starts, the tears arrive, sudden and overwhelming. Your body folds forward, releasing something that had clearly been building for hours, sometimes for considerably longer than that. Nobody who saw you today would recognize you in this exact moment. The composed version and this version feel like two entirely separate people occupying the same body. This isn't sadness slowly building towards some breaking point. It's something more specific. It's your body finally receiving permission, the moment it detects genuine, complete privacy and safety. You've done this so many times it feels almost normal now. Hold it together publicly, release it privately. A rhythm so practiced, you barely notice you're performing it. This isn't simply being a private person, it's something more specific and considerably more exhausting. And understanding it starts with understanding what your nervous system is actually doing. Psychologists sometimes call this delayed emotional release or emotional containment, a pattern where genuine feelings get held in check until the nervous system detects sufficient safety to express them. Your nervous system is constantly unconsciously scanning your environment for safety. In public, around others, around expectations, it often determines that full emotional expression simply isn't safe. So it holds the emotion in a kind of suspended state, not fake, not suppressed dishonestly, genuinely paused, waiting for conditions that allow full, unguarded release without any audience. Privacy becomes the signal. The locked door, the empty room, the closed car door. These become the specific triggers that finally tell your body, it's safe now, let go. This creates something like an emotional ledger running quietly in the background all day. Every held back tear, every swallowed reaction, every composed response gets recorded, waiting to be released. When you're finally alone, that ledger comes due all at once. Not because you're falling apart randomly, but because the accumulated total finally has somewhere safe to go. This isn't dysfunction exactly. It's a nervous system doing precisely what it learned to do, separating public survival from private truth, because somewhere, expressing that truth publicly felt unsafe. And the more competently you perform composure, the more dramatic that private release often becomes. The gap between the two versions of you keeps quietly, steadily widening. Here is what happens inside someone who develops this pattern early. At some point, expressing real emotion in front of others didn't feel safe, welcomed, or received well. Maybe crying in public brought embarrassment, punishment, or unwanted attention. Maybe falling apart around others meant becoming a burden or losing status, or facing consequences you couldn't predict. So you learned an efficient, protective solution. Hold everything until later, until private, until it's finally, verifiably safe to feel the full weight of whatever you're carrying. This skill became so deeply practiced that it eventually stopped feeling like effort at all. Composure became automatic, a performance so convincing that even you sometimes forget it's happening. Your public self performs stability with genuine, remarkable skill. But that performance always comes with an invoice, and the invoice always, eventually, quietly gets paid in private. And here is the open loop worth holding on to because we're absolutely coming back to it. The discipline this pattern requires is actually an extraordinary form of internal strength. As an adult, this often means very few people ever witness you actually struggling. You've become so skilled at containment that most people assume you simply handle things. You may not even let yourself fully feel something until you're physically, completely alone. The feeling exists, but access to it gets delayed until privacy is fully confirmed. The gap between your public self and your private self keeps growing wider over time. Maintaining two entirely separate emotional realities becomes its own quiet, invisible source of exhaustion. Nobody sees the toll this takes because the toll itself only shows up exactly where nobody is present to witness it, which is, of course, precisely the entire point. You see it in the person crying quietly in their car in a parking lot, mascara running, engine off, simply unable to walk through their front door composed for one more minute. You see it in the one who locks the bathroom door at a party, sits on the floor, breathes for exactly 2 minutes, then walks back out completely, convincingly fine. You see it in the shaking hands that only start trembling once the meeting ends, once the door closes, once there's finally no one left in the room to notice. You see it in the person who holds an entire family together through a genuine crisis, only falling apart once everyone else is finally safely asleep or somewhere else entirely. You see it in the friend nobody worries about because they've never once witnessed a single crack, unaware that the cracks exist in full, private, unwitnessed detail elsewhere. You see it in the person who appears utterly composed at a funeral, offering comfort to everyone else, then absolutely collapses the moment they're finally, completely alone that night. You see it in the work call that ends professionally, followed immediately by a completely different voice, a different posture, tears, arriving the instant the call disconnects entirely. You see it in the person who checks, almost instinctively, that no one is actually home before finally allowing themselves to cry, even in their own supposedly private space. And you see it in the specific, aching loneliness of never once having someone physically present during your actual collapse, only ever afterward, only ever the aftermath, alone. This creates its own particular kind of grief, being profoundly capable of composure while never once letting anyone witness the moment that composure genuinely, finally comes apart completely. I promised we'd return to something important. The discipline this pattern requires is actually an extraordinary form of internal strength. Let's talk about exactly why that's genuinely true. Holding composure under real, sustained pressure requires genuine emotional regulation skill. This isn't avoidance. It's active, effortful management of overwhelming feeling in real time, repeatedly, successfully. Your nervous system's precise sense of timing, knowing exactly when it's finally safe to release, reflects sophisticated internal awareness, not fragility. This isn't your system malfunctioning. It's your system successfully protecting you over and over in environments that may not have always deserved to witness your full truth. The tragedy isn't that you contain yourself skillfully. The tragedy is that you've never once let the containing happen with someone safely present to witness the actual release. You learned somewhere along the way that falling apart had to be a solo act, that witnesses made it dangerous, that true safety meant complete, total, guaranteed privacy. Here is the reframe that matters. Strength was never about never falling apart. Strength was always simply your capacity to keep functioning while carrying something genuinely, enormously heavy. That strength doesn't disappear the moment someone else is finally allowed to see the collapse too. You can be both remarkably strong and occasionally genuinely witnessed at once. So what does healing this actually look like? It begins with letting one trusted person witness a small crack sometimes, instead of always waiting for complete, guaranteed privacy first. It means practicing feeling something real slightly earlier, before the door fully closes, before privacy is entirely confirmed. It means finding someone specifically capable of staying present during your actual collapse, not just arriving afterward to help you quietly clean up whatever remains of it. It means understanding that your strength was never genuinely in question. You've already proven it, repeatedly, for years, often at real and largely invisible personal cost. This pattern kept you safe for a long time. It was intelligent, protective, and completely necessary ones. But you're finally allowed to let it soften, gradually, gently now, because you were never weak for needing complete privacy before. You're simply finally allowed to stop waiting entirely alone for the moment you're truly permitted to feel.